Este sábado,
Next Saturday,
desde Palacio Nacional,
from the National
quiero
Palace,
terminar de informarles
I would like
sobre la
to
visita
finish
a
informing you
Washington, el encuentro
about my
que
trip to
tuve con el
Washington,
presidente
about the
Donald
meeting I
Trump.
had with
El
Donald Trump.
motivo principal
The main reason
fue el
for my
de
visit was
participar
to take part
en
in
el inicio
the beginning, the
del
inauguration
tratado
of our trade agreement,
de
free trade
Estados
agreement
Unidos,
with
Canadá,
Canada, Mexico, and the United States,
él en la
the USMCA,
Oval
in the Oval Office
me
of
entregó
in the White House. He gave
lo que
me
ellos hicieron. Nosotros
the book
también
that they put
tenemos
together.
ya,
Uh,
un
we also put together a document,
me llamó la atención
and it
porque,
stood out to me that
va mi
he
firma.
told me that he had signed the book. He had autographed the book.
Muy satisfecho
He seemed very happy,
que
very satisfied,
hablaba de el acuerdo comercial más importante
and he told me that
de
it was
Estados Unidos
the most
en
important
todo el mundo.
trade
Era,
agreement in the world.
desde luego, trascendente, importante.
Of course, it was
con China, pero que
very
era,
important. The one that they have with China is also very important, but this one was even bigger.
con todos los capítulos, anexos,
The book with all the chapters
todo lo que comprende
and the indexes and
tratado. En esencia, el
all
propósito
that this
es,
treaty, that this trade agreement means.
integrar,
Essentially,
respetando nuestras soberanías
we are respecting each other's sovereignties
para que
to help each other, to complement each other. So so that North America takes back its economic importance that it has lost over the past maybe 50 years. Since 1970, North America, by this I mean Mexico, Canada, and the United States, they represented roughly 40% of world trade. 40%. 40% of the world's GDP, gross domestic product. And now the three countries I previously mentioned only represent 27% of the GDP. There has been a decrease in the importance of North America in trade. So the purpose is to strengthen each other mutually by coming together. We have deficits. What does that mean? That means that we are selling to the rest of the world around 3.5 trillion dollars is what we're selling to the rest of the world. But we are importing goods and merchandise from the rest of the world around $4.1 trillion. So there is a deficit. We have a deficit of around $600 billion. So why don't we produce the goods that we are importing? Why don't we start producing them in North America so as to stimulate job creation? It would also strengthen businesses in our countries, and that would translate into well-being. We have to use the advantages that we have at our disposal. Proximity, for example. We could save in logistics, transporting goods, and this means that we would create more job opportunities for workers in Canada, in the United States, and in Mexico. It would unite us a little bit more, the assembly line, the production line in the country. It has to become complementary. We have to complement each other. As you know, there are plants, auto part plants in Mexico that manufacture a good, maybe a part for an automobile or any other type of merchandise. What we want to do is bring these production chains, production lines together. We want there to be more integration of them. The agreement, the treaty, was signed at a perfect moment, at a very good moment. As you know, there is a very serious economic crisis due to the coronavirus pandemic. So this is a very important moment to sign this treaty so that we can continue to grow. In the case of Mexico, it will be very, very important because it will mean more foreign investment in Mexico. Not only from the United States and Canada, but from other countries in Europe, for example, or from the European Union. Because we are able to export to the United States and to Mexico. This is what we signed in the White House. And I wanted to show you something because it is a treaty different to the one that had been previously signed between our countries. This treaty, this agreement, includes work conditions. Mexico will not be seen simply as a country that offers cheap labor. It means that in the United States and in Canada, they will be able to manufacture auto parts, for example, for the creation or for the production of goods and merchandise. We don't want to import parts from other places. We just want to assemble them. We don't want to be seen as cheap manual labor because that was the idea that other countries had of us, of Mexico. Now, for a plant to be opened in Mexico or the United States or Canada, the plant has to consume or to buy a certain number of goods that we produce. That's very important. So the raw materials and other parts have to be bought in our country from small and medium-sized businesses. It is of the utmost importance. The salary, the question of salaries in Mexico. At the beginning of the last agreement, NAFTA, the salaries in Mexico were higher than those in China. So China had an advantage over us comparatively. And that's why China became the factory of the world. But what happened after a few years? The salary in China, they were making around $50 a month
$50 más bajo.
in the year 2000. It was $50 lower than in Mexico.
1,300 pesos.
We're talking about 1,300 pesos. They were making less than in Mexico. But what happened? What's happening now? In 2018,
El salario en China subió. Y el de
the
México,
average salary in China
estos 20
is
años
higher
bajó.
than it is in Mexico. And in Mexico, it actually has gone down over the last 20 years.
Pesos.
So now they are making roughly $100 more in China than in Mexico.
300 pesos al mes.
Roughly
Salario promedio
2,300 pesos a month.
es superior.
The average salary in China is higher than it is in Mexico now.
Entonces, con este nuevo tratado,
So with this new agreement, this new treaty,
y tienen que mejorar
this has to change.
las condiciones
We have to
laborales
improve,
de
increase
estos,
salaries in Mexico. Our working conditions
llegó al
in Mexico
acuerdo
must
de
improve.
estar supervisando para que no haya
We came to
explotación
the agreement that we will supervise constantly so that
mexicana y para que
Mexican laborers are not exploited. There has to be democracy
no quiere decir
within
trabajadores,
our
no
syndicates.
aceptamos el injerencismo, el intervencionismo,
We
pero
will not
sí
accept the
hay de paneles,
the intervention
comisiones
of third parties.
que vamos a estar cuidando
But there are independent organisms
de explotación de los trabajadores.
that will make sure that
Es
Mexican
más empleo,
workers
pero también
are not
mejores,
exploited.
salarios.
It will translate into more jobs and better salaries.
Por eso,
That's what this agreement
considero que la
means.
visita fue
That's
buena,
why,
fue
in my
exitosa.
opinion,
Agradezco
my visit was good. It was successful.
porque
My meeting with
yo
President Donald Trump,
respetuoso. Ha habido una muy
he
buena
treated
relación.
us respectfully, and I have a good relationship with him.
Y
There is a good relationship
la
between our two
visita, el
countries.
encuentro sirve para
And maybe our meeting will
que aunque tengamos posturas ideológicas distintas,
have
sí se pone por
can
delante el interés
our
general.
meeting can mean that although we have ideological differences,
Se puede llegar a
we can still
sin prepotencia,
reach agreements
sin extremismos,
without extremism, without arrogance,
la conciliación,
always looking
respeto mutuo,
for dialogue,
geopolítica,
for common ground,
por vecindad.
respect.
Tenemos
Due to our proximity, we have to have
Estados Unidos.
a good relationship with the United States. We cannot fight with them.
Complementarnos, que haya cooperación para el desarrollo.
We can help each other. There can be collaboration between our two nations.
No quita lo México,
And
bueno,
being
es un
polite
brazo
does not mean that we are weaker. It is not a sign of weakness.
pendiente.
Mexico is a sovereign nation. We're free. We are a free nation.